Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to be covering decorating with fresh greens with Peg today. This is a class she does every year. We look forward to it. For those of you who are new, welcome. For those of you who have attended before, as always, just bear with me for a moment. This is a webinar class, so we can't see you or hear you. It's a little bit different than a normal Zoom meeting. So if you have any questions during the class, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box. Just a quick warning, Peg and I were chatting before the class and she's got a lot to cover today, wants to show off these beautiful greens that she's got here. So we may not have time to get to questions, but don't worry, we can always follow up with you by email or phone if we don't get to it. So quick introduction for those of you who don't know. I know Peg really needs no introduction, but Peg's been with us for many years. She taught, as we were actually just talking about, she works on our Gardening Advisor television show. She's been teaching classes on greens and is one of our designers and plant specialists in the store. So Peg, I'm going to go ahead and just let you take it away.
Thank you very much, honey, and welcome to our Zoom. I'm very pleased that you've joined us because this is perhaps one of my favorite programs to begin the Christmas season. And that's working with indoor arrangements, things that you want for centerpieces for your table or other places. And we're going to come up with a potpourri of different things that you can come into the garden center and buy, because we buy in all these beautiful greens and then we fresh cut the ends of the stems and put them into warm water so that they can rehydrate and that they will last well that way. So I suppose the very first thing that we need to talk about is, if you buy them here, they have been conditioned. If you are going out into your garden to pick these greens, then you need to pick them, bring them into the house, and put them into some warm water. So, and leave them there before you start to arrange with them for at least a couple of hours so that they can absorb all the water that's possible. Okay. Now into that, I use a product called Prolong. It helps to keep down the bacteria. And then also when I soak the oasis, which we'll talk a little bit about, I use Prolong according to the directions in the water that I am using to keep them all nice and fresh and to keep the bacteria from building up. So Prolong is important. And for those of you who have fresh cut trees, you of course want to take them home and get them into water as soon as possible, and periodically replace any water with warm water that has Prolong in it so that you can keep that tree as fresh as possible, as long as possible, okay? So first, you have to have the right tools, okay? And my tools are very important to me. Number one, I have more than one pair of Felco pruners, and they last for years. You can even replace parts on them. You can sharpen them. Wonderful things. So Felco pruners, they're more expensive, but they last forever if you take care of them. Nice red handles so you can spot them when you lay them down somewhere and say, oh, where are my clippers among all this stuff? So Felcos, I recommend highly because I've used them forever. And then the other thing that I cannot be without is the Joystick Scissors, which I have here ready to work with. They were produced by Joystick many years ago to use in the kitchen, and they're wonderful there. So I have to have a pair there, a pair in the shed, a pair in my purse. They're fantastic, and they also last forever. Again, nice red handles for me so that I can spot where I laid them down. Now, we don't have a lot of these, and I think we only have a few at the Merrifield location, but I have a number of pair of these and I can't be without them. They're foxgloves. So if you're looking for a gift for yourself or for a friend, you can't beat foxgloves. Why? Because I can feel everything I'm doing with them. These are well worn, believe me, they've been through a lot. And I really need, as much as I'm working with these greens, to protect my hands, but I use them also in my gardening. You see, they're very snug, and now I can still feel what I'm doing. There's nothing to obstruct that. When I'm working with something that's wet, I'll slip a pair of disposable gloves on top of them because I don't want to work with wet gloves. Okay. So having talked about that, I'm going to slip these off for now. And we talked about conditioning quickly. That's very important. Not only do you condition them, but you must add water to these oases. I'm working all with oasis today. Sometimes I work with pin holders and other methods of doing it, but this is all done in wet oasis. And this one is dry. It's very lightweight. And you want to put it in water. I often do it in my kitchen sink if I'm doing a number of these. Submerge it in warm water that you have placed some prolong in according to the directions, and leave it for at least 25 minutes to thoroughly absorb as much of that water as possible. Okay. And then I work a lot with the designer bowls, which we do sell here, primarily because they're easy and I can sit them in a more decorative container if I choose to, or not, because I'm going to do enough greens that you won't see this container anyway. So let's bring over one that I have prepared here, because when we finish today, I hope that it will be presented in such a way that you will feel confident in doing this yourself. When I put that wet oasis, I've cut a portion of this and it fits into this bowl, and it has little pegs in the bottom that holds it into place. I leave it tall because I want plenty of room to push those stems into. Every now and then, you're putting this in a warm house. Take this to your kitchen sink and add water from the top because it dries out first from the top. Okay, it's absorbing water from the bottom. You want to be sure that you add to the top, do the reservoir, drain it off before you put it back into place. Now, having talked about that, I have a number of these at my home. I go into the greenhouse. These are what keeps your furniture waterproof is what I was looking for. I slip it under my tablecloth or under my table runner, depending upon the size that you need, to be sure that anything that is in water doesn't contact any of that furniture, because you do not want to ruin the finish of your furniture. If you can't do this, then figure out some way to keep that up off your furniture. That to me is very important. Okay, so let's assume that you will be able to use something like that, a saucer, something to keep it up off the furniture. Okay, so primarily we're going to start with talking about the typical centerpiece, and I have prepared one that I did and put in place on my table at home. This is a large table. Fortunately, it was a made in Virginia table, and it will extend to seat 12 people. Now, I did not have time to prepare the area and put the place settings, etc., around, so forgive me for that. But I wanted to show you in context how I use this. And I've used it with a number of candles. And if you are using candles during the holidays, please be very careful, because candles can be very dangerous. Okay, I usually try to use a little glass bobèche, at the bottom of that candle, which catches any drippings if you have candles that drip. And I discovered that these particular candles do drip. And they're a little bit too big for my Bogesh, so I'm going to have to watch it. Okay. This particular arrangement I decided to bring in so that you could actually see, but we have another picture first. This is a lot of mixed greens, and I didn't decorate it heavily. I wanted primarily the contrast of textures and the contrast of colors here. And then I'll do a color pickup with maybe a few accessories. And of course, the plates and the place settings and so forth, which will make this look more festive, okay? So let's bring that one up. And it's quite large because it's a table that seats 12 people. Now, I don't know how well you can see that really, but it has quite a combination. It has cedar, it has Chamaecyparis cryptsake, it has holly, it has noble fir, and magnolia. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of color in this and a lot of textural changes in it. So I think it's very interesting. One thing that you do want to consider is when people are sitting at the table, you want to be able to converse over this arrangement. You do not want the arrangement to be so tall that it interferes with eye contact. It's long, but it's narrow for the table. And so it's not going to be in the way of those who are dining at that table. So let me lift it up again so that you can pretty much see what that container looks like. And then I'm going to sit it back into place. And we're going to talk about the differences and how you put it together. So I'm going to reach over and show you how, if you choose the materials that you're working with, you also choose the look. And you have to decide the size. To move some of the stuff out of the way, honey. Yeah, could you do that for me? So that I don't have so many distracting things. Thank you, Danny. You're such a good help here. Yeah, that's so much better. All right, here we go. This is much better now, you can see. So this one is very different. It has a different personality. And I've used a lot of noble fir in this, and I've used a lot of boxwood. So again, that's a color contrast, but it's a textural contrast also with the magnolia. And I really do enjoy this staghorn fern. And I don't know if you can see that because we can't zoom in, but I like the back side of that better than I do the front. So I often will use it so that it cascades over the container. But you can see that you could just use this container, which is that little designer bowl, as it is, or when you're not at the table and you've done this ahead of time and you've kept it nice and fresh because you're going to move it to your kitchen sink. You're going to add water to it every 2 or 3 days because it drinks a lot of water, believe it or not. And you need to keep it replenished in order to have it go through the holidays, which it certainly should do, because these are all greens that hold up well. And I have used this holly because, I mean, the berries, yes, it's Ilex verticillata, and it's the one that loses its leaves. And so you have the beauty of the berries showing. Our regular American holly isn't the one that really has longevity. Sometimes you have to replace that one, but you don't have to replace these. And they do enjoy being in the water too. So here you're seeing this again is another arrangement that you can use with where people can see across it. Okay. But I have also put this on a little bit of a pedestal and placed it in a lovely container that I have, and it can sit up tall and be very attractive until you're having your dinner. And then you can take that away and sit it flat down on the table so that it doesn't interfere with conversation. And so that's one. And if you can sit that a little further over so it doesn't contrast. Now, I'm going to do the how-to, okay, but I want to show you some ideas first. This one is completely different and a little bit smaller. Again, it has some length and has some width to it. And I have used a lot of the gray toned noble fir in here. And an absolute favorite, and we just got fresh in today because it has been difficult to get this Carolina Sapphire, but it just came in today and I had time to condition it before I placed it in this arrangement. And I used Boxwood in this also with just a touch of the Cryptomeria cryptside. That's the yellow one that you see there. Okay, so how would I decorate this if I wanted to do that? So I brought a couple of fun things that you might think about. I did spray some magnolia, and you could do this. You just simply go outside to do your spraying and spray the green part of the leaf, and then you've got the beautiful backing. So you could actually use that with the brown. Let's do that. But you've got both. You've got the brown and the gold, and let's put those into place. I picked these ahead of time so that I wouldn't have to do that right here. Okay, I'm going to put enough of this with that brown back showing. Love that. Okay, in through here, in through here. And you can stick those magnolia leaves directly in the oasis if you want to. I picked it so it was quick. Okay. Now, I also sprayed some of the greens, the Cryptomeria, for instance, and I didn't have to pick that. And that can go in as an accent. Here we go. They have some pretty cones, but you can't see the cones because it's too low in the arrangement. Okay, let's put some of that in. I'm probably not going to finish all of this off. Okay, here's where the little Joyce chins come in handy. And let's put some cascading out. I love the texture of this. It's very attractive. Okay, coming in through here. I like the brown showing. I like the gold, but I don't want it to be too gold, okay? So I thought, I'm going to use the brown there. I'm not going to finish this all the way around. I'm going to just do enough in here that you can get the idea of what I have done. Now, I'll go a little deeper into what you can go out and pick from your garden if you're a gardener that you might not have even thought about before. And that is, and I'm going to show you also where it's in an arrangement as we go along. But my Christmas and ostrich fern, these are the fruiting fronds that come up at this time of the year, and they're almost like dried, okay? And they're beautiful, beautiful brown. Let's see if you can see that. It's very pretty up close. So since I've got the brown back here of the magnolia leaves, let's see what happens if we add a little bit of this to this arrangement. I think it's kind of interesting myself. I like it. So ferns, if you've got shade in your garden, ferns are for you, really. Okay, I'm gonna put this one over in here. And as I said, I'm not finishing this all the way around because I don't want to take the time to do that. So I'm going to put some of that in there. But the texture of this is beautiful, and it does a wonderful color pickup on the brown of the magnolia leaves. Not going to finish that up, just wanted to give you the idea of what it's doing. And this is something that you may not have right now. We don't have this to sell. I'm just giving you some ideas of something that is different, okay, that you might think about for the future. And also suggestion that if you've got a lot of shade, particularly in moist areas, you can do ostrich fern and you can do cinnamon fern. So let's see what you think about that while we're going along. All right, so that's all natural. Now, how do we create our arrangements? Let's start with the basic part. Okay, we have our designer bowl, and this happens to be in this kind of thing with the oasis a couple of inches up above, so that we've got plenty of room to come into that. All right. Here is the basis for both of these arrangements. The first pieces that I place in here into this wet oasis is the noble fir, and I set the length with those first two pieces. I push one into place and the other into place. And then the next two pieces that I fit in will set the width of this arrangement. And they will not be as long because you don't want them to infringe upon your diners. This is longer. It could be round if you have a round table, okay? But this is created for a longer table. Longer ones put in first, shorter here inside, and then the next pieces that I fit in will set the height. So I will have set my length, my width, and my height with the first pieces of the greens that I place into this arrangement. And then I will frequently go back and place a shorter one that's a little longer than the width one and shorter than this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can fill in. You have the basis for your design. And if you're concerned about it being lopsided, measure them. Have these the same length, these the same length, these the same length, and the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the same length. So that's the basis for your design. Now, when you're doing this with the noble fir particularly, you are going to have to do some trimming. And this is where your Joyce chin really, really comes in handy. I never waste any of my evergreens, particularly if you're buying them. It's very precious. So I'm going to use this as filler in this design. So I'm going to snip here, here, and the Joyce chins work on this. Some of it you absolutely have to have the Felco pruners, okay? So I'm going to cut all of these and use it as filler in this. But I don't want to put that into my oasis like it is, because it's going to tear up that oasis. The oasis hangs in there quite well, but it's a little on the fragile side. So decide where you want these things before you put it into that, because you don't want to put it in and take it out and put it in and take it out. You'll tear up your oasis. And here's what I do for this. I'm trimming that thoroughly so that you see that I've trimmed that. Now I'm going to put this in. Sometimes, always actually, not just sometimes, I will sort of hold on to this container and push that thoroughly into place. So I'm going to quickly cut a few of these so that you can see how I go in and fill with this particular one. I've cut it again, And I'm going to come in and place, but I'm holding this on the other side while I'm pressing against that. Otherwise, it's difficult to get it into the oasis. Cutting it again. See how I'm holding this container? Because if I don't, like that, it's a little harder to press it in. So I'm going to push that down inside. Okay, let me put in a couple of others here, like so. Now that probably will put much more of that in to help cover that oasis. Now, I'm going to bring up something that's fun. You may have osmanthus in your garden. It's a false holly. It looks just like holly, but it isn't. It'll grow in sun or it'll grow in a fair amount of shade. Mine does not bloom well in the deeper shade. I prefer it in semi-shade. And it doesn't matter if it's morning or afternoon or filtered all day. So osmanthus, and you can keep this shrub to a 5 to 6 foot height easily. It's a good foundation plant. It's great, particularly if you do have some shade. Here's one additional benefit. It's beautifully variegated, okay? But it is so, can you smell it from there? No? Well, if it's really warm outside, you don't have to walk up close. It comes to you. It's very fragrant and has lovely blossoms only at this time of year, which is just wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to add a little bit of this, and no, we do not have this for sale. You can substitute holly, you can substitute anything, but I just really wanted to share with you, and I'm going to use some of this as filler, okay? I could have done this last, but I didn't. I was so excited to show you what's going on with this thing blooming. Okay, so I'm going to just randomly put that into place. Okay, like so. But I'm not going up above any of this, okay? I picked quite a bit of it. Oh, can you imagine how fragrant this would be? But unfortunately, you can't buy it, you know, you got to grow it, okay? Got to put that down inside there. It's just great. And you don't need a lot of it because I want to use some other filler with this. I'm going to put one in the center to sort of balance it out a little bit. See how I'm cutting those stems and easing it down into that area. Okay, let's use a little bit of boxwood. And here again, I'm not going to completely finish this. I just want to give you some ideas. I will come in and cut a length of that and push that inside, staying within the perimeters of this. That the noble fir is the longest of it all. I'm going to go back to this because it's a little easier to cut with the Joyce chins. And press one to the other side. Remember to stay within your framework and what looks pleasant to you. And I will fill in enough with that. All the little pieces become filler, but you ease that down inside so that you will not see your oasis and you have a nice full design. Okay, I'm going to stop with that because I don't want to take up too much time. Then there is yellow if you choose to use that. And this is the Cryptomeria cryptsea, which is beautiful. This gets to be a quite good sized plant, by the way. And it's going to complement that gold that I have in the osmanthus. I'm going to put that. And see how I'm holding this so that I can press that down inside and going to fill in with just enough of this that it picks up the color without being too loud. You don't want it to scream at you, you know. Stripping the ends where you need to get it into that oasis and push it firmly into the oasis. Don't just tuck it gently. Push it firmly in. let's add just a little bit more towards the center. Let's come into this area and put it down in here. Pressing it gently. Okay, we hopefully haven't added too much for you on that side, but I hope that that helps you with placement of those things. So that is how I do this. Okay. Now you could, the little bows that you took away, let's bring those back. If you wanted to add red, because if you put gold, it might be too gold, okay? You could make your little bow and you could tuck that into place. And the wired ribbon is wonderful because then you can manipulate that wherever you want it to be. You could put one there and you could put another one in through here, okay? Bringing that down. And that could be your decoration. You could add berries if you wanted to do that. So hopefully that's the how-to that you need. Thank you, Danny. Okay. Now, let's take it just one step further. I put together oh, I did that one earlier. Okay, I've been there and done that. Don't want to repeat. Okay, let's talk about some small spaces. Move this back. Sometimes you don't need a big arrangement. Now, we talked about a centerpiece for a dining table and needing to keep it within the bounds of conversation. Sometimes you just need a little something somewhere. And so we recently had a little tea party because with the grandchildren, because I have collected teacups over the years. And so I picked up one of those and thought, okay, I'm going to show that I use my things within my house. And I have a little stand for the container, and I put a little tiny touch of ribbon underneath, and it's wanting to curl up, and I think maybe I like that, you know. And then I put a piece of Oasis in the cup. And again, I put a little piece of ribbon underneath to accent. You might not need to do that. And the traditional holly and ivy. So I went out into the garden and I picked some of the Foster's holly. And the American holly would work beautifully also, or even the Ilex Widowberry would work. I picked some ivy and I used some little branches for my line material up in this way and down in this way, and sort of wound the ivy around that, and then tucked in some of the holly. Just very, very simple. Just a small piece of Oasis inside that teacup is doing all of this, and using just enough of the ivy to completely cover that. But I enjoy having little small touches of things somewhere. And this is just one way to do it. Any lovely little container that you have is going to work. Okay. Now, Danny, let's show them what I did on my front porch. Nope, there we go. Now you can't really see the arrangement terribly well here. And so here again, I brought it in so that you would be able to see it. But I love my front porch. It has rocking chairs, it has a swing. It has some other collectible things. I enjoy birdhouses. I feed the birds. I have birdhouses outside. But there are a couple of these because we carry a line of birdhouses that are so beautiful. I didn't want to put them outside, and so they sit on my front porch. And I really don't want the birds to nest in those, so I have to close off the nesting. Otherwise, in the spring, they try to come to the front porch, and then they don't like to be interfered with walking back and forth. So I really don't want them to nest in these boxes. So I picked up a tall container. I wanted to use all natural materials in this, and I accessorized a little bit, and I'll show you what I did with that. And here again, these are all things that were collected from the garden, but you can do this with all fresh greens if you choose to, because there are times where you want a taller arrangement instead of something that's designed for a centerpiece on a table. So I'm going to bring that forward. Okay, I did this in a lovely old container that I've had that actually has, let's come back to this now, Daniel, that actually has a little birdie on it. And it's a little tall for this, but I needed to bring it forward to show you. I used pine in this because pine has such an unnatural look to it. I used the American holly, and I used some of those dried materials. I actually used the chrysanthemum, which is the sea oats at the top of this. I have a love-hate relationship with osmanthus because it seeds. It grows in a lot of shade. It grows beautifully where you need something that holds the ground, keeps back erosion and so forth. It accepts some moisture or it accepts being dry. It's just a very beautiful plant. And then picking it to bring it in, you can spray it gold if you want to, and it's beautiful, or bronze or silver if that's your color. But it seeds. And I love things that seed. And I use them a lot in my garden. But if it isn't something that pulls up easily, that's where the love-hate relation comes in. This one is determined. It has quite a root system. And so it's difficult to get it up. I discovered that where it's possible to do that, my little string trimmer will take care of that, but not always, okay? This also has a stilby in it. And now I know that it's really too tall to sit up here where I'm doing this, but I also use some little birds as accessories. I'm doing this because it carries out a theme, and also because my little great-granddaughters will enjoy this, and some mosses on some sticks just to carry out the theme. And then I went down and I saw this incredible birdhouse that we have for sale downstairs. Here again, this is an absolutely wonderful gift. They are so well made. The metal piece at the top and the nice little roof that it has. And there's a clean out on the back, which makes it easy if you're putting it outside. As I said, I selfishly put mine on my front porch because it was so beautiful. So let me sit this back into place. And what I did with this was a little different. You might have a container, tall container, that holds water. But this particular container does not hold water. So what do you do when that's the case? You can line it with heavy plastic. You could even put, if you bought the 1 gallon Ziploc bags, you could even ease that down inside and put your wet oasis inside of that. I actually lined this one with the heavy green foil that we have in the greenhouse. You just have to be careful not to puncture this, but it's not likely that you're going to do that. And then I put in some of the greens and put in my chrysanthemum grass and my cinnamon fern, and also some dried astilbe. I have a lot of shade in my garden, and so I grow a lot of those shade plants and a lot of astilbe. And I have some astilbe that reseeds too, and it's beautiful. And I walked through the garden and I thought, oh my gosh, it's December And those fronds are still beautiful. So I use them natural in this, but you could spray them if you chose to do that. Now, one thing, if you do use grasses and you use some of these things, and with the pine cones, I keep on hand all the time Design Master. It's a crystal clear glaze, and it really makes things shine. You can actually spray your arrangements with it. It makes those things shine too. And it's all this line of spray that is Design Master, and in gold and bronze and silver, and all those things blend really well. So I did groupings in here of the pine cones. You can see I've used the small round ones. I've used some of the white pine cones also. All right, I'm going to put this back. It's in my way right now. Moving it back. And talk a little bit about the pine cones and how I did that. I want to show you, by the way, what this is still looks. All of these things look like. I'm just going to bring this bundle up. This is for the future. This is for those of you who may or may not have these things. The other thing that's wonderful is hydrangea. And I intended to bring along some of that I sprayed too, because I still have my hydrangea blooms, a lot of them outside. And even though they're brown and not terribly attractive right now, you can gently spray them any color you want to. And they are beautiful worked into these arrangements. But this is the Astilbe, and it's really quite beautiful. And you can spray that if you want to. This you can see a little easier is the chestnut. It's like the sea oats, the ones you're not supposed to pick down on the ocean. So those are the things that I have in that arrangement. And as I said, if you don't have these things, then just substitute in its place the evergreen boughs, okay? And then I used a lot of the pine cones, and I grouped these smaller ones. I held them in my hand. They're all wired, and I'll show you how I did that. I grouped those together like so, and there's more of these, of course. And then I pushed those into place. That's why you see that looking like a grouping. You could also, this is really quite attractive. If we can bring this back over here just for a minute, Danny. Placed within this. And actually with these smaller ones, I think that it would be nice. Now do not, absolutely, do not cut these wires with, and I didn't bring my wire cutters up, so I'm not going to cut them. Don't cut them with your Joyce chins, and do not cut them with your, actually the Velcros have a place where you can cut the wires, but it's not the blade, it's beyond the blade. Okay, so I'm going to do that then. I forgot about that because I don't often use it this way. But that is not being cut by the blade. It is being cut by a specific place for this purpose, okay? These are small cones, so I'm going to place those in groupings and see what you think about that. I would not put them in this arrangement because it's busy enough already, but I want you to see that they could be, okay, in groupings there, okay? And it's very attractive. You could use larger cones if you wanted to. Not going to take the time to do that, but you could do that. Okay, Danny, back into place though. Thank you so much. All right, how did I do that? There's different gauges of wire, and the gauge that I have used for this is 18 gauge wire. And I've got one empty here somewhere. Okay, where did it go? Here it is. All right, 18 gauge wire. And we do sell this by the piece downstairs, I think. This is a white pine cone, which are numerous this year, by the way, for the first time in a while. I let that wire protrude from the one side by a couple of inches. And I very firmly go through the cone and pull it very tight, twisting it and pulling it very tight. This is heavy enough gauge wire to go into place in any of your arrangement. For this smaller arrangement, you would definitely have to cut that stem, okay? But using the wire cutters or that specific place on these Velcros, that will make that cut. And so that is how, even with the heavier ones, that is what I would do if I were making a swag and gathering these things together and doing a grouping of the pine cones. I would wire it. So that's how I do those. Okay, I hope that that is helpful with the actual putting together, but we do have a couple of other thoughts and ideas in a couple of pictures there. This one I did last year, I think, and I used the greens that drooped down, and there's several of them that drape nicely that way. So I placed those first, and then I placed a few taller pieces of the green and heavily used those red winterberries. But that is a grass that grows about 2 to 2.5 feet tall in my garden and loves shade, part shade particularly, but grows in quite a lot of shade. It accepts some sunshine too. It's called Hakama Clover. It is one of my absolute favorite grasses. It can be massed, it can be used one piece as an accent. It's wonderful to have the contrast. All of the contrasts of textures and colors that I have used today is what makes a garden interesting. You can walk out and pick some of these things. You can walk out and just enjoy being in the garden because it's so pleasant to look at. And when you add ornamental grasses, you add motion to it. When the wind blows, they blow. It goes brown in the wintertime. I have several in the garden and also in containers. And they're beautiful, even though they are brown right now. But I picked these and brought them in and sprayed them gold and put it in clumps. And I really, really enjoyed that very much. And then just the simplicity of a large, maybe you have a nice entrance. Maybe you have a beautiful urn or some other lovely container. And this is just using those fresh greens and the magnolia. Magnolia is marvelous. And some birch branches, a couple of peacock feathers, a few pine cones. These are just a potpourri of things that you can use for interest in your garden. Okay, Danny, let's see. I think I brought up ribbon because ribbon is a big part of Christmas in many ways. I said to you, there's different kinds of wire. There's the heavier wire, the one that I use that's 18 gauge. The smaller the number, the bigger the wire. Going up to 26 or 28 gauge is the wire that we use to tie all of our bows with. We tape it with floral tape so that it doesn't slip and slide. So let's quickly see if we have time to make a bow. And it looks like there's not going to be time for questions today. Okay, so I'm going to do a bow that takes probably 4 yards, but you have to decide how long do you want your streamer You gather that. This is going to be difficult because it's heavy ribbon and my hands don't hold it like it used to. I don't tie bows downstairs anymore. My hands have tied in 45 years, quite a few bows. So I'm twisting and the streamer is on this side. That loop is on the opposite side. You cannot put two loops on the same side. You will drop it. So this goes back to the back. You twist and come to the other side, opposite side. Make a loop the same length. Go back. You're holding this with your thumb and your finger. Everything is being held right here. Beside that, I'm going to create another loop that is the same size, going back to the back again. And twisting that, placing on the opposite side, the fourth loop. Going to make a fairly good sized bow, turning and putting one in the middle of these, but longer on this side. That's the fifth loop. And then turning and twisting it because I have to bring up the proper side. And another one of the same length, and that's number 6. Now I want 2 up here. And so I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to make another loop, go back. You see, I've got to go back and forth. So my thumb and fingers are holding all of this material. And I hope I don't drop it. The hands are not quite as nimble as they once were. Okay, but that's all right. I still know how to do it. Here we go. Now, I want the other tail to be a little longer, perhaps. I'm going to turn that material and bring that streamer down. Okay, pick up that wire. This is 28 gauge wire. It's been taped with floral tape. I'm going to place it over everything I am holding. And I'm going to do a sleight of hands here. Watch how I shift this, bring that wire back. I'm going to put that hand back in place, pull this down, and this hand is pulling that as firmly as I can and twisting it off. Nice and firmly, because you don't want it to come apart. Alrighty, and I'm hoping my scissors are nice and sharp. Yes, I have scissors handy too at this time of the year. So I'm going to cut that other streamer and I'm going to pull it down, pull the other streamer down, do some minor adjustments. This is beautiful wire ribbon, nice and heavy too. I love this. It was hard for me to hold it because it's a lot, but here we go. It's ready to tie onto your wreath, your swag, or wherever you want it. And, you know, smaller as a part of your table design, you know, you could even have, well, I can't lift this up. This could be a part of your table design. That's good enough. Thank you, dear. All right, so that's how we make our bows. I didn't put the little infamous loop in the center because some people get that right away and some people don't. So you don't have to have it, you know, it's beautiful just as it is. And I don't think there's time for questions, but I hope that with this thought process, you'll enjoy creating some things for yourself inside your home for Christmas because it's joyous and it's very fragrant. It smells so good. Come in if you have any questions. We've got so many talented people here, and we're glad to meet you and glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much, Peg. Sorry, I'm fighting with my computer mouse on this side. We're getting some, thank you everybody so much for the notes you're sending in. Before we close, we will be sending out the recording and some supplemental materials for you guys with notes on the products that Peg used. I know there was a lot of interest in that. So we'll get that out. And Peg, appreciate it so much. Always love seeing your class on fresh greens.
Thank you.
One of my favorites.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for taking the time to watch.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon and Merry Christmas.